Zelda is perhaps one of the most lore-heavy franchises in Nintendo's lineup. What began as a simple story of a hero saving a princess from an evil pig wizard has expanded into a whole fantastical world with its own history, legends, and of course mythology. The pantheon of deities within the Zelda mythos has steadily grown over the passage of time, and today we're going to be taking a look at every single one of them throughout the entire series. What better place to start than with the trio that started it all, Din, Nehru, and Farore. These three were first introduced in Ocarina of Time and are stated to be the progenitors of Hyrule's world itself. The Golden Goddesses, as they are called, laid the firmament for the entire realm, creating the land and all the life within. And if other games are to be believed, they even went on to create other worlds after the fact. Once they were done, however, they retreated back to who knows where, their work seemingly done. However, the goddesses also left behind a sacred relic before their grand departure, the Triforce, which was said to be capable of granting any wish. Not much is really known about the goddesses themselves, though. They seem to be somewhat amoral entities who don't really concern themselves with traditional concepts of good or evil. They have meddled in mortal affairs on occasion, though. Probably the most notable example of this comes from Wind Waker, in which the goddesses are presumably responsible for flooding the world in order to trap Ganondorf beneath the ocean. It should be noted, of course, that they only did so after enough people prayed to them en masse. They just probably weren't praying for this exact solution. In another timeline, it's implied that the Golden Goddesses were the ones that bestowed Ganondorf with a piece of the Triforce during his execution, granting him the power to survive and nearly escape. They likewise revoked this piece of the Triforce in the climax of Twilight Princess, seemingly on a whim. It's also implied that when one makes a wish upon the Triforce, it's these three who actually allow the wish to happen. Din, Nehru, and Farore are by far the most enigmatic deities, since pretty much everything they do happens off-screen. They seem to mostly reside in their own higher plane of existence, or wherever they came from, interacting with the world in ways that can seem almost self-contradictory at times. They're very much portrayed as these unknowable figures, who likely can't ever be truly understood from a human perspective. There is, of course, a fourth goddess of note who seems far less indifferent or distant than the other three, Hylia. Though a goddess herself, she was actually created by the three golden goddesses and entrusted with overseeing the world and the Triforce on their behalf. Though Din, Nehru, and Farore made this realm, Hylia was effectively the one assigned to rule it. She did so for many years until the Demon King Demise emerged and tried to claim the Triforce for himself. Hylia gathered all the races on the land, except Hylians ironically enough, to face this threat while raising the ladder up into the sky. From there, we learn that Hylia is the one who put the whole Chosen One cycle in the series into motion. She created the Skyward Sword, which eventually became the Master Sword, selected Link as the hero who would wield it, and even reincarnated herself into a mortal woman named Zelda. All this in a grandiose bid to finally truly destroy Demise and end his wicked machinations. A plan that mostly succeeded, save for the curse Demise issued in his final moments. Hylia's exact state following that is a little vague. Presumably, her spirit returns to being a watchful protector deity after the first Zelda's passing, but her bloodline continues to produce heiresses that inherit some degree of sacred power and even the same name as her first vessel. However you want to interpret that is up to you, but we at least know that Hylia herself is the one bestowing Link with health and stamina upgrades in Breath of the Wild. In fact, Hylia appears to be the sole deity worshipped by the Hylians now, as no hint of worship toward the Golden Goddesses can be found. On the matter of Breath of the Wild, there are certainly a fair few powerful, almost mythical figures in the current Hyrule, although only 3 are really considered deities in the context of the narrative. The first to mention is definitely Melania, the so-called horse god. He can empower the mounts of those who make him offerings and even revive dead ones, though seems to be quite wrathful towards those that would mistreat their horses. His power is certainly very niche, and his origins are vague, though the simple fact that he has his own flower spring suggests some relation to the Great Fairies. Regardless, we're told that he is a god, and so I'm counting him on this list. There's also Satori, the Lord of the Mountain. This entity is, more than anything, likely meant to be an homage to the late Satoru Iwata. It's referred to as a reincarnation of a great sage, which has a whole lot of implications after the Tears of the Kingdom, not that I expect that this will mean much in the long term. The point is that, in lore, Satori is basically a sort of nature deity who watches over wildlife. Not a whole lot more to say about it, honestly. The last deific figure we have to acknowledge in this era of Hyrule is the Bargainer. This is an enigmatic deity found in the depths who will trade Link items in exchange for lost souls. As ominous as this sounds, the vibe that I get is that this thing is supposed to be some sort of underworld deity, or at least a psychopomp. Its only concern is taking spirits to the afterlife where they belong, but due to falling into obscurity and losing worshippers, the Bargainer can no longer do so freely. It has to rely on a mortal hero to fulfill its duty now, and even then it must offer tangible rewards for the service. But alright, let's back up a bit out of New Hyrule. And before anyone brings it up, I'm actually choosing not to count the horn statue entity, since I'm pretty sure that thing is more of a demon than a deity. If we're looking for other deific figures to talk about, then I think we should go from the end of the timeline to the beginning. Throughout Skyward Sword, Link will encounter 3 guardian dragons who watch over the various regions of the surface: Theron, Eldin, and Lanayru. They're clearly named after the golden goddesses, but serve as protectors of the lands that they reside over. Theron boasts power over water, Eldin over fire, and Lanayru over thunder. These 3 dragons are tasked with safekeeping a portion of the sacred song Link needs to complete his journey, though actually getting them to share the song requires Link to fulfill various tasks, from restoring their former power to reviving them from the dead. It's not clear exactly what happened to these dragons after the game's events, but it's probable that they just passed away eventually. At least, in Lanayru's case, it's undoubtable that he did. There is another deific figure of note in Skyward Sword, however: Levias. Located within the Great Stormhead, this massive flying whale is yet another servant of the goddess Hylia, meant to aid Link in his journey and safeguard ancient secrets. He is, unfortunately, possessed by a parasite when Link first encounters him, but that's nothing a sacred sword and some arrows won't fix. There are 3 other whale-like deities to talk about in the Zelda mythos. The first is Jabu Jabu, the supposed protector deity of the Zora in Ocarina of Time. To be honest, we don't really know a lot about this guy, and he doesn't exactly have a great track record. Not only does he get infected by a parasite like Levias, which causes him to eat the Zora princess, he also disappears when Zora's domain gets frozen over. He does have a successor in Wind Waker, but that guy's island was utterly destroyed, so not doing much better in that regard. Then there's the Windfish from Link's Awakening. This legendary beast is the catalyst for the entire game's events, as he slumbers in a giant egg and created the entire illusory island within his dream, an island that is fated to disappear when he finally awakens. However, a nightmare infests the dream, requiring Link to intervene and wake the Windfish himself. It's a bittersweet victory, freeing the imprisoned deity but also wiping Koholint Island from existence. At the very least, the Windfish does appear to help Link out with his whole stranded at sea situation and things. Where he goes or what he does after this, no one really knows. Last on the list of whale gods is the Ocean King from Phantom Hourglass. He rules over the seas of another world, and even had an entire temple dedicated to him. However, the Ocean King had his power stolen from him prior to the events of the game by a parasitic demon called Bellum. Are you seeing a pattern here? And reduced to the form of an old man. He keeps his true nature hidden for a good chunk of the game, though reveals his identity after Link first manages to get aboard the ghost ship and find the petrified Tetra. Once Bellum is defeated, the Ocean King reclaims his true form and proceeds to send Link and Tetra back to their own world, presumably taking up his mantle as a protector deity once again. On the matter of protector deities, though, we have to talk about the Great Deku Tree. The Deku Tree is actually something of a title passed down among a lineage of giant talking trees. Regardless, they all share the same role, to watch over the forest where the Kokiri/Koroks dwell. The forest dwellers are most commonly likened to fairies from Celtic myth, which I suppose makes the Deku Tree a sort of king of the Fae in a sense. Regardless, the Deku Tree's power is meant to keep the forest thriving and safe from outside influence. These trees have marginally better success at this than the whales, though they often seem to need saving regardless. There is also Valu, another dragon who protects the Rito and Wind Waker, though he seems a bit different from the dragons we previously discussed. Valu resides atop Dragon Roost Mountain, fittingly enough, and keeps watch over the entire island from his lofty perch. Like the others, he winds up needing to be saved from some sort of parasitic monster who drives him into a state of madness. So, yeah, these protector deities really aren't very good at their jobs, are they? Credit where it's due, though. Valu actually gets a bit of payback by blasting Ganondorf in the face and setting the Forsaken Fortress on fire. Even if it doesn't ultimately amount to much, it is nice to see one of these guardians finally fighting back against the forces of evil. The same could be said of the giants in Majora's Mask, though. These four mighty titans watch over the land of Termina and are responsible for catching the moon when it threatens to crash and destroy the entire world. Not a whole lot is really known about them outside of their role in the game itself, but it is stated that the Skull Kid befriended them somehow prior to getting possessed. On that note, I suppose you could consider Majora itself a sort of deity. Mind you, it's an extremely malicious one. Pure chaotic evil inhabiting a wicked mask. It possesses Skull Kid to make him do its bidding and tries to destroy the entire world, seemingly just for the hell of it. This thing gives Link but 3 days to stop its wicked machinations, but during that time spreads all kinds of evil across Termina to keep the hero at bay. Good thing even Majora doesn't have control over time. Next we have the Light Spirits from Twilight Princess. These 4 radiant avatars serve similar roles to the dragons in Skyward Sword, watching over specific regions of Hyrule. 3 of them even share the same names. Their very presence seems tied to the natural state of the world, and shattering them allows Zant to cast Hyrule into Twilight. While they continue the trend of guardian deities not being particularly great at their jobs and needing rescuing, the Light Spirits do come together to give Zelda the Bow of Light during the final confrontation with Ganondorf. So, that's something at least. On the matter of nature deities, there's also Zephos and Cyclos. These brothers control the winds, and also teach Link songs he can play with the Wind Waker. The former seems to be the more even-tempered of the two, and allows Link to alter the direction of the breeze anytime he likes. The latter, however, is infuriated by the destruction of his own monument at some point, and spends his time conjuring storms until he's forcibly calmed down with arrows. After that, Cyclos teaches Link how to freely travel the Great Sea with cyclones of his own. There are also a handful of deities that we know very little about. In Spirit Tracks, the Gorons make reference to a mountain goddess, but we never get much context about her. Similarly, we're introduced to the Fairy of Winds in Twilight Princess, who grants Link the Gale Boomerang, but this entity never speaks again after that. Does this fairy have some connection to Cyclos and Zephos? Who knows. Then there's the desert goddess worshipped by the Gerudo, who has monuments in both Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess. Some speculate that this might actually be a depiction of Din, but no real concrete information has ever been given in any official canon material. Of course, there is one god that stands out as particularly mysterious. The Fierce Deity is an infamously enigmatic entity. By playing games with the Moon Children in Majora's Mask and sacrificing all his other masks in the process, Link can acquire one that vaguely resembles his adult self, albeit with an altered color palette. Donning the mask turns Link into the Fierce Deity, which can utterly annihilate Majora with ease. As nearly all the other masks in the game contain spirits within them, especially those allowing transformations, it seems safe to assume that the Fierce Deities mask does as well, though the broader implications of that are left largely mysterious. There's tons of fan theories out there, and there's even a sort of explanation for it in the manga, but again, none of those are necessarily canon. Either way, there's no denying that the bearer of this mask boasts truly fearsome power. And for the time being, those are pretty much all the godly figures in Zelda's mythos. There are a couple of other entities who you could argue may qualify, but I decided not to count demons, fairies, or monsters for this list. So, which of Zelda's deities are your favorites, and would you want to see any of them come back in future installments? Leave your thoughts and comments down below, and until next time, stay bright.